On my 20th birthday, I thought the only thing I'd be intoxicated by was joy. Instead, after a single glass of wine, a strange, blistering heat began to spread through my veins like wildfire. My skin prickled, my vision blurred, and my heart slammed against my ribs as if trying to escape. I wasn't drunk. No, this was something far worse. The music in the KTV pulsed around me, laughter and clinking glasses blending into a dizzying haze. I forced myself to stay upright, clinging to the edge of the table, willing my legs not to buckle. I needed to find Andrew. He had invited all these people for my birthday. He had to know what was happening. But when I staggered into the hallway, following the sound of his voice, the world tilted even further. Around the corner, I froze. I don't care about status or matching families. Andrew's voice was low but dripping with confidence. Emily, I only believe in myself. I will make sure you become the Carter Group's future miss. As for Lily, my name. After tonight, the entire campus will know how cheap and wild she is. She'll be nothing more than a joke I can control whenever I want. The words sliced through me like ice water poured over fire, chilling and burning all at once. My stomach twisted. My knees weakened. This was the man I had loved for 3 years, the man who had kissed me goodnight and called me his forever. And now he was plotting to destroy me. The heat inside me roared higher, choking me. My breath came in short, desperate gasps. Black spots crawled at the edges of my vision. I stumbled away, shaking so hard my teeth rattled. I had nowhere to go, no one I could call. Except one person. Uncle Luke. The phone trembled in my hand as I pressed his number. It rang once before his deep, familiar voice came through, rough and restrained, like molten lava trapped under stone. "Be good," he said after I choked out my name. "Send me your location. Stay where you are. I'm coming to get you." Before I could respond, someone shoved me back into a private room. My head snapped forward, dizziness making the walls swirl. The air was thick with alcohol, perfume and something else, something dangerous. I couldn't breathe. My mouth was desert dry. My skin felt like it was on fire from the inside out. I clawed at the neckline of my dress. Desperate for air, desperate for cold, desperate for anything to put out the inferno burning through me. "Oh, slutty little thing. Couldn't wait, huh? Big brother's here to take care of you." The stranger's breath was hot against my ear, his words sickly sweet and venomous all at once. My mind screamed no. I had been drugged. On my birthday. Someone wanted to ruin me, destroy me. He pinned me down, tearing at my dress with greedy hands. My nails dug into my palms until I felt the sting of broken skin, until the metallic tang of blood filled my mouth from biting my lip. Then I saw it. A bottle opener on the table. With every ounce of strength left in me, I grabbed it and swung. It connected with a sickening thud. He roared, clutching his head as blood spilled between his fingers. I shoved him away, my torn dress slipping from my shoulder, and stumbled toward the door. I couldn't go to the police. They'd think I was just a girl who drank too much at her own party. I couldn't go home. It would break my parents. The drug in my system was still pulsing, tightening its grip on my body. I staggered into the cold night air, shivering violently. My heels clicked against the pavement, each step a battle against the fire raging inside me. Only Luke could save me now. When I opened my mouth, my voice was so soft that it could have melted into water. "Uncle Luke, I don't feel well. I'm hot." Uncle Luke was always cold and unmoved, like an iceberg. Standing still, he looked at me, and the pitiful sight I had become was reflected in his dark brown eyes. My face was flushed, my eyes were watery, I was dressed sloppily, and I appeared ruined entirely. The door slammed shut behind me, and in one swift movement, he drew me into the room. The coolness of his arms caused me to breathe a soft, almost indulgent sigh of relief the moment our skins touched. My strength drained instantly, and I collapsed against him, instinctively nuzzling into his chest, desperate to absorb every last drop of his rare soothing cold. Outside, I heard Andrew's voice and footsteps following me. "That is weird. She has only just entered this building." Luke held me with one arm while picking up his phone with the other. His voice was as calm and cold as ice. "Hey, could you please send someone to the police station? Someone is causing trouble at the military housing complex." I could only hear tension in his voice because I was so close. His throat tightened as he spoke. He hung up after just a few more words. Moments later, sirens wailed outside, and Andrew and the others went silent. The danger had passed, but it clung to Luke's chest. I gripped the fabric of his uniform tightly, like a tame animal. I dug deeper into him, greedily absorbing the coolness of his body. His firm waist, sculpted over years of training, had an almost lethal appeal. As I slid lower, he let out a stifled grunt. His scorching hot hand suddenly grabbed mine and held it firmly in place. My heart pounded wildly. The room spun. My dress fluttered as Luke lifted and carried me to bed. His movements were gentle and restrained. However, the look in his eyes was fierce, as if he wanted to devour me completely. He reached out with his long fingers, lightly pressing them against my forehead, and his Adam's apple bobbed sharply. "Lily, you're burning up. Do not move. Uncle will get a thermometer." I shake my head. Weakly, the drug in my system made my entire body ache, and all I could do was cry out in a trembling voice, "Uncle Luke, I want." He looked at me, his throat tightening and his fingers calloused. The rough texture sent shivers down my spine after years of keeping a gun pressed against my wrist. After a moment, he let go. His breathing is uneven. Suddenly, he leaned in close, and his masculine scent overwhelmed me. His tall frame cast a heavy shadow on me, and beneath it, I melted like spring water. "Lily, someone drugged you, and with such a strong dose." His voice was low and gravely. "Do not be afraid. I'll go with the antidote. If we do not receive it soon, it may cause permanent damage to your nervous system." His husky voice reached my ears, sending waves of desire through me. I wasn't listening to anything he said. All I could think about was his lips, which were soft, pale, and inexplicably appealing. I could reach them with a slight lift of my head. I swallowed hard, reached out, and wrapped my arms around his neck. His pupils had suddenly contracted. I saw my long hair cascading across the white pillow like a waterfall. I looked like a seductress, not the quiet, obedient girl I usually was. When I spoke again, my voice was full of desire. "Uncle Luke, I want you." Luke cupped my waist with one hand while gently brushing the other across my cheek. Each touch caused my heart to tremble. His eyes were dark, filled with desire. "Lily, do you know who I am?" "Yes." I nodded faintly. "Your Uncle Luke, Luchan, and Joe." "Good day, girl," he muttered. "Uncle Luke will give you whatever Lily wants." Sunlight shone through the crack in the curtains and fell on my face. A splitting headache struck me like a hangover. Last night's memories resurfaced like a rising tide, fragmented but painfully clear. Luke's burning body heat, his labored breathing, and my shameless pleading made my face flush with scorching heat. I sat up abruptly in bed, overcome with a wave of shame that threatened to drown me. The room was empty. Luke was gone. The air still carried his clean, sharp pine scent, mixed with a faint hint of tobacco from his cigarette. He was gone, and a strange emptiness settled in my chest. On the nightstand was a glass of warm water and a few pills, weighed down by a note. The handwriting was bold and crisp. "His soldier's handwriting is precise and firm. Take the medication when you wake up and rest." Well, a brand new dress and knickers were neatly draped across the back of a nearby chair. The tag is still intact. My face became even hotter, flustered, and ashamed. I quietly left Uncle Luke's flat and headed back to campus. The moment I stepped through the school gates, I felt something on the stairs around me, like poison needles pricking at my skin from all sides. The whispers sounded like a swarm of flies buzzing inside my ears. "Look, Lily has heard. She went crazy at KTV last night and messed around with a bunch of guys. Andy is poor. It's a disgrace to have a girlfriend like that." My blood became cold. Andrew had moved faster and cruelly than I had imagined. I clenched my fists and walked faster. All I wanted was to return to my dorm, which was my only refuge. But as I approached the base of the academic building, a crowd blocked my path. Andrew led them. There were dark circles beneath his eyes. A thick bandage was taped across his forehead, and his face was completely haggard. Emily stood beside him, clutching his arm and looking concerned. When her eyes met mine, a smug expression appeared on her face. Andrew looked at me like I was filthy. His eyes were filled with disgust and betrayal as he pointed at me. His voice trembled with false emotion, as if he had been wronged. "Lily, you have the nerve to return." The crowd let out a collective gasp. Every eye was fixed on me. I stared coldly at his pitiful performance. But as soon as our eyes met, he flinched as if I had slapped him. He took a step forward and yelled, his voice hoarse from rage. "You hooked up with a random guy last night, spent the entire night with him, and now what? You've got nothing to say. I loved you so much, and this is how you repay me. I have already reported you to the counselor. The school should punish students like you, who have no morals." Each of his words was like a poison dagger, stabbing right into my heart. The gossip and finger, pointing around us became like an invisible net wrapping around my body. I was frozen, shaking with rage. This was the man I'd loved for 3 years, who twisted the truth and was shameless beyond belief. Under everyone's accusing stares, I managed to calm down in front of his self-righteous expression. I gave him a cold, unwavering smile. "Oh, is that true? Then let us call the cops." The air froze. Andrew's face became the color of raw liver. He didn't expect me to respond that way. The crowd erupted again. Whispers resemble boiling oil hitting water. "She said to call the police. Now he's in a panic." He thought he could scare her. Guess not, as a middle-aged woman wearing glasses pushed her way through the crowd. It was our student counselor. Her face was filled with restrained rage. Her stern gaze fell directly on me. "Lily, come with me to my office." Her appearance was like an injection of adrenaline for Andrew. He immediately returned to his wounded demeanor, pointing at me as his voice cracked with fake sorrow. "Counselor, you're just on time. I didn't think Lily could be this type of person. I'm very disappointed in her." Emily spoke up right away, whispering just loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Andy is just too kind. That is why he was misplayed." The two of them worked in perfect harmony, nailing me to a pillar of shame. The counselor's expression darkened, and she looked at me as if I were trash, beyond saving. I could feel my heart slowly sinking into a cold, dark abyss. I had nothing to say in my defense. So this was what it felt like to be powerless right before I collapsed under the crushing weight of it all. A voice rang out, sharp and cold as ice, cutting through the chaos like a blade aimed at her. The crowd parted instinctively, forming a clear path. A tall figure stepped forward in the sunlight. His military boots landed with a steady, mighty thud. Each step landed directly on the nerves of everyone present. It was Luke. He'd changed into a crisp military uniform. The "its" on his shoulders glinted gold in the sun. A layer of frost appeared to cover his sharply handsome features, and his gaze swept across the crowd like a blade. The noisy mob fell silent instantly. Andrew's smug expression froze. Even the counselor stood stunned, nervously pushing up her glasses without much. Luke walked straight to me after glancing at Andrew. His tall frame completely shielded me from all hostile gazes. He did not look at anyone else. His gaze was fixed on the counselor as he spoke in a flat tone that left no room for argument. "I am Lily's uncle." He then took out a neatly folded piece of paper and gave it to her. "This is her emergency room report from a military hospital. Last night, an acute allergic reaction caused a high fever and convulsions. Do I have to call the attending physician to explain it to you?" Face to face. The counselor's face became pale in an instant. Andrew opened his mouth but could not say a single word. Only then did Luke turn to face me. When he saw my face, his cold gaze softened slightly. He then produced a velvet box and opened it in front of me. Inside, there was a Patek Philippe. "Ladies, keep an eye on Lily. This is your belated birthday present." As he addressed the crowd, his voice remained calm and composed. "I went to deliver the present last night, but I discovered she had an allergic reaction to something she ate. The situation was critical, so I drove her to the hospital myself. It was flawless, a complete airtight lie." Andrew's face turned white, then green, and finally black. It was a spectacular performance. The mood in the crowd changed instantly. Okay, so it was a food allergy. We almost blamed the wrong person. I knew Lily didn't seem like that type of girl. Andrew is an excellent storyteller. Luke's long fingers gently rested on my shoulder, and his warmth seeped through the fabric to me. I trembled, realizing with complete clarity that he had just rescued me with a lie that only the two of us shared. The gossip faded away, leaving an eerie silence filled with awe and caution, his palm still steadying me. Luke did not utter another word. He led me away from the crowd, into his black SUV. The door closed behind us with a solid thud, cutting us off from the outside world. The air inside the car was tight. The sharp pine scent clinging to Luke's body was accompanied by a faint trace of tobacco wrapping tightly around me. The smell was the same as last night. My cheeks burned uncontrollably. Neither of us spoke. The silence grew thicker, heavier, and oppressive. After a lengthy pause, he lit a cigarette but did not smoke it. He held it between his fingers, allowing the smoke to curl into the air. He finally admitted to Lily that his voice was rougher than it had been when he spoke in front of the crowd the night before. "If you want to call me worse than a beast, I will not argue." My heart skips a beat. I turned my head sharply to face him. He did not look back. The outline of his face, illuminated by the cigarette's shifting light, appeared particularly harsh and painful. "I watched you grow from a little girl to now, and I kept reminding myself that I am your elder. I am your uncle. There's a line I can never cross." His voice was low, as if he were stating some fact unrelated to him. However, the slight tremble in his knuckles revealed the storm raging beneath the surface. "I volunteered in the most dangerous war zones to get you out of my mind. If I stayed far away and long enough, I'd forget." I could see shadows flickering past the window, casting a bleak veil over his strong brow. "But then, with a single phone call and one word from you, Uncle," I broke into a hiss. He stubbed his cigarette in the ashtray. The sharp sizzle pierces the silence. All of the walls he'd built came crashing down at once. Boom, my mind went blank. So all those years of distance were effective because he didn't care. Behind his strict self-discipline was a deeply felt love. It surged like a tide. His words redefined last night's shame and madness as a long, restrained loss of control, rather than a mistake. My heart raced wildly, as if it were about to leap from my throat, a combination of dependency, gratitude, and something else, which I couldn't quite name, began to take root in the deepest corners of my chest, growing uncontrollably. The car went silent again. Luke leaned back in his seat, like a statue depleted of all strength. His eyes were tightly shut. His Adam's apple bobbing throughout his entire presence exuded a sense of restrained collapse. I looked at him, the man who had made up a lie to protect me, who had been through years of love and torment on his own, and something profound inside my heart ached. I reached out my trembling hand and gently placed it on his clenched fist, which rested on the gear shift. He jolted as if burned, his eyes wide open in his dark pupils. I saw shock, restraint, and adeptness. I couldn't tell, like a whirlpool dragging me in, but I didn't back away. I met his gaze and spoke in a voice that only the two of us could understand. I softly asked my uncle, after all these years, if my words hurt. The car's quiet interior was pierced like a needle. Luke's body stiffened and his eyes tightened as he wore his carefully maintained armor. The eyes snapped. A tidal wave of emotion surged from within them. There was no response. The air remained still. Even the smell of smoke from his fingertips appeared frozen. The next moment, his large hand clamped around my wrist, and his other hand gripped my chin, forcing me to look up. Every bit of his scent hit me all at once. That kiss was punishing. His lips crushed my pride, forced my mouth open, and stole every breath I had. It was not gentle, it was not hesitant, it was wild. It was a declaration. It was a man erupting. After 10 years of agonizing restraint, I didn't resist. I allowed myself to drown in the storm, returning his kiss with the same desperate abandon. I responded to him right then. 1 week later, a financial announcement shook the entire business school. The Carter Group had been named as a suspect in large-scale accounting, fraud, and tax evasion cases. All core accounting records were verified using solid evidence. The company's listing plans were halted entirely, and regulatory authorities had launched an investigation. From inside our dorm, the Carter Group stock was in free fall, plummeting into the red. I could hear Emily sobbing through the closed door. My phone rang with frantic messages from Andrew. "Lily, weren't you the one behind you? I am begging you. Please let my family leave. If you prefer, I can get down on my knees." I stared at the text without emotion and quietly pressed delete. There are no waves, no rage, only calm. I packed my belongings and walked off campus, straight to the military housing complex, which had become increasingly familiar to me. The doorbell rang once, and it opened almost immediately. Luke stood there wearing a simple black t-shirt and olive green cargo pants. His posture remained as tall and upright as ever. The sharp, icy edge he was used to had vanished, replaced by a quiet warmth that felt familiar. When he saw me, a hint of a smile appeared in his dark eyes. Naturally, he took the bag out of my hand. "You're home," he said. I nodded and stepped into the slippers he had prepared for me ahead of time. Follow him into the living room. There was a laptop on the coffee table. Its screen still shows the eye, catching news about the Carter Group. He didn't turn it off or explain anything, as if it were just the weather forecast. I approached him and looked up. I witnessed what happened to Andrew's family. Luke's gaze slowly fell on my face, unreadable. He reached out and brushed his thumb lightly against my cheek, as if I were something rare and valuable. He touched someone he shouldn't have touched. He spoke calmly, but with judgment and finality. Then he leaned in slightly, and his tall frame cast a shadow over me. Completely. Warm breath touched the shell of my ear. "Lily," he whispered, "nobody in this world is allowed to hurt you, not before and not now. Not ever." My heart trembled without thought. I wrapped my arms around his solid waist and rested my face against his chest. There was still a faint smell of smoke in the kitchen. I listened to his heartbeat, which was steady and robust. This time, I did not run. I buried myself in his embrace, savoring the security that was mine alone. I'm not sure how long we stayed like that, but Luke eventually let go and guided me to the couch, where the laptop screen glowed softly in front of us. "Want to learn how I did it?" he asked. I nodded, but my heart pounded uncontrollably beneath my ribs. He did not give a lengthy explanation. He scrolled up the news page to see which media outlet was behind the financial report. Beneath it was a small, easily overlooked logo of one of Boston's gold capital investors, Liu Beijing. He exhaled slowly and spoke in 4 words, each like a depth charge detonating in the still waters of my mind. "Your father never told you." A loud buzz echoed in my mind before leaving. Blank Capital, Liu Beijing's capital. The legendary financial titan known to shake the entire business world with a stomp of a foot, and the man I'd known as uncle for 10 years were all involved. I looked at him, seeing the same familiar face and handsome features, but with an unfamiliar, almost reverent aura. This was not just Luke. This was someone who ruled in a completely different universe to deal with someone like Andrew. He said, noticing the shock in my eyes. A warning is not enough. It only makes them believe you are weak and easily manipulated. You must strike clean and final. Make sure he never has a chance to crawl back. Make sure he never ruins your life again. His voice was soft, but it carried a ruthlessness that left no room for doubt. Root and stem were cut down without mercy. Just then, a news alert popped up in the corner of the laptop screen, with the headline, Latest Update. About the Carter case. The victim's best friend becomes a witness. Emily testifies against CEO Andrew Carter, providing key evidence of sexual misconduct. Emily was photographed crying dramatically in front of reporters. She'd betrayed Andrew. I turned instinctively to Luke. He had barely spared the screen. His dark eyes were calm, as if he had anticipated the sharp snap. He closed the laptop, blocking out all noise and filth from the outside world. The next second, he grabbed my chin and tilted my head up, forcing me to meet his gaze, his scent warm and commanding. Lily, you enveloped me again, he spoke in a low, rough tone. I will take care of the trash. You only had his burning lips pressed firmly against my forehead. Please look at me. I then moved into Luke's flat. Andrew and Emily vanished like dust in the wind, never to appear again in my world, and Luke's once blurred forbidden line with me was now broken by his hand. From then on, everything between us felt natural. He'd ask what I wanted to eat the next day, and then get up before me, already cooking in the kitchen. When I rolled out of bed, he would silently lift me onto the sofa. In his study, he is working on military documents beside me while I lie with my head in his lap watching films. The tension in the air between us had subsided, giving way to an overwhelming, intoxicating tenderness. Over the weekend, he drove me to the Liu family estate, a traditional courtyard home tucked away in the Beijing suburbs. It was solemn and serene, with armed personnel stationed at the gate. Only then did I realize that the man I had thought of as my uncle, and the real Chencho I now lived with came from entirely different worlds. His parents, graceful, refined, and kind, greeted me warmly. His mother took my hand without any surprise. Her eyes were misty, and her voice trembled with emotion. Sweet child, you've been through so much in recent years. I stood frozen from behind. Luke wrapped his arms around me. His chin rested on the top of my head, and his voice was softer than I'd ever heard it before. Mom and Dad. This is Lily, my fiancée. After returning from Liu estate, I felt as if I were walking on air. Everything happened so quickly and perfectly that it almost felt surreal. On Wednesday afternoon, I went to the school library alone to return some books. The sky had already begun to dim by the time I stepped outside. As I turned onto the path back to the flat, a black van abruptly came to a halt in front of me. Before I could react, the sliding door opened with a loud crash. A rough hand clamped hard over my mouth and nose, and a sharp chemical stench permeated my breath. I only had time to let out a brief, muffled cry before falling into complete darkness. When I awoke, I found myself tied to a chair in an abandoned warehouse. The thick ropes bit into my wrists and ankles, causing a sharp, burning pain. The air smelled of rust and dust, and a shadow emerged from the darkness, backlit by the dim light. I couldn't see his face, just a twisted manic outline. Lily, you are awake. That voice. It was Andrew. He looked far worse than when I last saw him. His eyes appeared sunken. His greasy hair clung to his forehead, and his eyes were filled with venomous madness. He moved closer, dragging a metal canister splattered with petrol. You're probably wondering, he said, laughing in a raspy, broken tone. How? I still dared to find you. I have lost everything. My home and family. I'm on the streets right now. All thanks to you and your beloved uncle. I thrashed against the ropes, letting out a guttural cry of rage. He seemed to enjoy watching me struggle with a sudden kick. He knocked the chair sideways. Do not worry, he will be joining us soon. He crouched in front of my face. The one who used to make my heart skip a beat has become cruel and deranged. I reported him for abusing his power by using military connections to suppress private enterprises. I fabricated some evidence. Sure, but he acted. The higher-ups do not take chances. Even if they suspect it's a forgery, they'll investigate. He is currently under internal review. Soon, he'll be stripped of everything. His rank and position will be a disgrace. My blood turned icy. This was more than fear, it was pure terror, overwhelming, not for me, but for Luke. He could not be brought down because of me. Despair surged through me like a wave, almost drowning me, and then sirens screamed in the distance, becoming louder and sharper until they pierced the warehouse's silence like a blade. Andrew's face became pale. He spun around with panic in his eyes, like a trapped animal. He grabbed the petrol can and shouted, wild and broken. It is too late. You're all dying alongside me. Just as he raised the canister to throw the petrol, the iron doors slammed open with brute force. A blinding light rushed in, cutting through the darkness. But steps rang out as a tall figure stepped into the chaos. Highlights gleamed through the dust, illuminated by the blinding glare and the gold on his shoulder. It was Luke. His sharp, striking features were now covered in frost. His dark eyes blazed with fury, like two raging fires threatening to consume everything behind him. The special operations team charged in quickly and precisely, immediately securing the area. Andrew froze in place. The petrol can clattered on the floor, spilling fuel everywhere. He stood there like a statue, paralyzed with fear. His eyes were empty. Luke did not even look at him. He walked up to me and dropped to one knee. His long fingers quickly and precisely untied the rope, cutting into my wrists. The roughest hemp left red, angry marks on my skin. He gently brushed his fingers across them. His eyes were filled with pain so intense that it made my chest ache. He said, "Lily." His voice is hoarse and trembling with emotion. "It is over. You are safe now." I can feel myself shaking. Luke drew me tightly into his arms. The familiar, comforting scent of pine enveloped me, washing away all fear and cold. I clutched the fabric of his uniform like a lifeline, pressing my face against his broad chest and soaking up the warmth I thought I had lost forever. "You weren't yourself." "Under investigation," I asked harshly, my voice breaking with tears. He gently patted my back, his deep voice murmuring into my ear. "That was just bait to get the snake out of its hole, silly girl." I looked up sharply, meeting his deep, dark gaze. The light in them was sharper than usual, infused with calm calculation and quiet control. I learned that Andrew had been secretly gathering information on me. He said it casually, as if discussing the weather. He intended to retaliate, and since he wanted to play, I raised the stakes. His tone remained steady, but each word carried a cold edge. A force that left no room for challenge. Only now did I realize he had never been passive from start to finish. He'd been the one pulling the strings. Andrew was dragged away by the Special Operations Unit. He was still shouting obscenities, but his voice faded beyond the warehouse's walls. Luke carried me to the car and carefully treated the red welts on my wrists. His hands were gentle as he held a first aid kit. His gaze was fixed, as if he were caring for a delicate treasure. "Emily," I murmured hesitantly. The image of her sobbing in the news flashed through my mind. Why did she betray Andrew? Luke's hands paused briefly. He looked up at me with an unreadable expression. "She did not betray him." He spoke calmly. "She got her revenge." He talked without pity, just a simple factual statement. The song was once closely associated with the Carter family. Years ago, Andrew's father set her up to steal the Song family's business. The fallout annihilated them. Her parents were unable to bear the burden and died together. My eyes widened with disbelief. That explains why Emily had grown close to Andrew. She had waited years for this moment, gathering evidence against the Carter family. Luke added, leaning slightly closer. His warm breath brushed against my ear, and his voice was a low, dangerous whisper that sent chills down my spine. "I just allowed her to strike sooner." I looked at him and saw a calm, steady face that concealed a strength far greater than brute force. He wasn't a soldier relying solely on physical strength. His mind was sharp, and his strategy was precise. He was like a player standing outside the board, watching how everyone else performed. The pieces were then moved at just the right time so that everything fell exactly where it should. Silently, I leaned in, resting my head on his shoulder. "Uncle Luke," I whispered. His arms tightened around me, pulling me closer. When we returned to the flat, Luke had not turned on the lights. He gently set me down in the living room. Sofa then knelt in front of me, bathed in moonlight that streamed through the window. He studied my face intently, tracing every line with his deep eyes. I witnessed the aftermath of fear and the wild joy of regaining something valuable. "Lily," he said, his voice rough and torn as if scraped raw, "marry me." It was not a question. It was a command, like a soldier issuing an order on the battlefield. He said it in a humble and pleading tone, though. My heart pounded in my chest. My limbs are numb with emotion. Without warning, tears streamed down my cheeks. I nodded firmly and threw myself into his arms. Yes, that single word was the most certain response I had ever given in my life. He held me even tighter, as if he could press me into his bones and blood. 3 days later, Luke drove me home to my family. My parents sat on the couch, watching the two of us stand side by side. Their expressions were complex. My mother's eyes were red. She took my hand, silent tears streaming down her cheeks, but she couldn't say anything. My father, the stern, unyielding military man, stared at Luke, the soldier he was most proud of and his most trusted comrade. Now he was holding his only daughter's hand. He sat in silence for a long time before lighting his cigarette. He took a deep drag and slowly exhaled smoke, curling in the heavy air. The room was full of unspoken emotions. Finally he looked Luke in the eye. I saw relief, resignation, and a hint of helplessness that only a father could have. Luke, my father, and Charles finally spoke. Should I refer to you as my brother or son-in-law going forward? The tension was broken in an instant. My mother laughed through her tears and playfully hit my father's shoulder. Luke stood up straight, looked my father in the eye, and said the epilogue loudly and clearly. Later, he led me into his study. Without a word, he unlocked the lowest drawer of his desk, the one I'd never seen open. I half expected weapons, secret files, maybe something dangerous. Instead, photographs. The first showed a schoolgirl by the window, sunlight gilding her hair in gold. The next, me at 18, eyes bright with candlelight over a birthday cake. One by one they traced my life, elementary school, high school, college, an unbroken thread of moments I hadn't even known were being kept. My breath caught, my chest tightened with a strange heat, half ache, half warmth. All these years and I never knew. He had already been loving me. Luke stepped behind me, arms encircling my waist, chest solid against my back. His chin rested lightly on my head, his breath warm at my ear. When he spoke, his voice was low and deep, like the last, lingering note of a cello. Lily, you were something I never dared to wish for. Every time you called me uncle, it felt like a line I couldn't cross. I turned, rose onto my tiptoes, and tried to kiss him. Too far. He simply cupped my waist, lifting me as if I weighed nothing, my legs instinctively wrapping around him. Then stop calling me uncle, I whispered, blushing. His lips curved. What should I call you? His answer came against my mouth, warm, unshakable. Husband. And with that, Luke carried me to the bedroom, where the night became nothing but the sound of our hearts finally beating in sync. The end.